Well, hello there, and welcome to Eagle River Lake. Now, ain't this just the most beautiful summer day? Quite warm, wouldn't you say? Can I get you a cup of water? Oh, it's no hassle. I got the lake right here. Just give me a sec. There we go. Would you like a drink? Oh, you mean this stuff floated in here? Yeah. Unfortunately, our lake here is a bit polluted. But if you'd like, you can help me and we can understand what kind of pollution's going on in our lake. Interested? All right, let's hop on in then. This here is Eagle River Lake. Now you might notice we got quite a few things happening in our water here. Did you know you can tell a lot about your water quality just by looking at what's currently living in the water? That's what we're going to do today. We're going to go into our lake here. We're going to collect some samples using our net. And then using a key guide, we're going to look and try to understand what's happening in our lake based on the organisms that we find living. As we get into the water here, we're going to want to be respectful of all the critters that are living. So we're going to get in nice and gentle so we don't hurt or step on anyone, and so that we try to leave the soil at the bottom of our lake undisturbed. So let's go in. There we go. All right. Now I got my net, and I'm going to see just all what we can get. Ooh, there's something in there. To make sure that our critters stay happy, we're going to put just a little bit of this water into our bucket just so that they can keep on swimming. All right, let's add him in. So I have my bucket here and it's full of all of the samples that we pulled out of the lake. And in a moment, we're just going to go through this and see what we found. Now today, when we're talking about these samples or these organisms, we're going to be breaking them down into 3 groups and what those 3 groups mean for our water quality. So group number 1 is the top tier. Group number 1 organisms means that we have excellent to good quality of water. So not a lot of pollution happening. Tier number 2 or group 2 means that we have good to fair water quality. So still not bad, but it does mean that there's something happening in our water and there is some form of pollution taking place. Lastly is group number 3. They live in fair to poor water qualities. Now this is not something that we want to see a lot of, as it means that we have a lot of pollution taking place in our water, and that's not something that any of us want. So we're going to dive into this bucket, we're going to see what we found, and then we're going to talk about them. So come on down to the bucket with me. So the first sample that we have here in abundance are crayfish. We have quite a few crayfish in here. It looks like we have about 4 or 5 of them. Now crayfish belong in level 2 of our water quality. So that means at this point we are currently sitting somewhere between good and fair water purity. So yeah, we have quite a few of those little guys. That's really good for us. That's saying that our water is at least middle tier. Now of course we want it to be excellent, so let's see what else we find. All right, so the next one we have here is a black fly larva. Now black fly larvae are also part of group number 2. They live in a wide variety of water qualities. So again, this little guy and all of his friends are telling us that we are currently sitting somewhere between good and fair water quality. And there looks to be about 5 or 6 of him in here. Now would you look at this? We have another stage of black fly here. So this is a black fly pupa. A black fly pupa also is from group number 2, the good to fair water quality. So this is just still telling us once again that our water quality is somewhere between good and fair. So this next one here is a dragonfly nymph. Dragonfly nymphs belong in group number 2. They live in the wide range. So right now, we're definitely getting a comfortable understanding that we are somewhere between good and fair. The question is, where do we land between that? And we can tell that based on how many of each organism we found. So far we have about 3 dragonfly nymphs, 4 crayfish, about 10 or so blackfly larvas and pupas. Let's see what else we have in here. This one here, he might be a little hard to see, but this is a cranefly larva. Cranefly larvas, they again are from group number 2. And it seems like we only have 2 of him in here. So I'm getting pretty comfortable saying we're somewhere good to fair. All right, now the next organism we have here are poached snails. Poached snails, we can tell it's a poached snail compared to a regular old snail because of the way that the shell opens. The shell here opens on the left-hand side, and that tells us that this is in fact a poached snail. Now, poached snails belong in group number 3 when it comes to discussing water quality. Poached snails can live in fair to poor water, and they live down at the bottom of our water source. Now, going through our bucket here, we have almost 20 poached snails. That's a lot of poached snails all in one sample. Now, that looks to be about everything that we have in our bucket right now that we pulled from the lake. And what we can tell is that our water quality is currently sitting somewhere between good and poor. Based on the number and the abundance of poached snails in Tier 2, we're probably more close to the fair level of water purity than good. So for us, that's not a great thing, as this is water that we use to drink and bathe. We use this water for everything that we do. But it's also the ecosystem for so many little creatures like the ones in our study today. So this means we have pollution. And there are many different types of pollution that can take place. But based on how our lake's looking right now, we can feel fairly confident that we're looking at a few certain types of pollution that are affecting our lake. The first type of water pollution we're going to talk about that's affecting our lake is chemical pollution. Chemical pollution is often the effect of runoff water or snow melt on the land mixing with chemicals and depositing those chemicals into the water. We can see a lot of oil, salt, chemicals that are often on roads or sidewalks, driveways, easily getting into our water source. We can also see a lot of soap often gets into our water. This is because a lot of people are washing things outside. When you wash your car outside, the water goes somewhere, and so does the soap. And a lot of time that soap can end up in our bodies of water. If you ever walk around campus and you're looking at the river, behind the fish ladder, you can see a lot of bubbling. A lot of the times this bubbling is caused by pollutions in the water, more often than not due to chemical pollution. Microplastics are another form of pollution that we can often find in our Great Lakes and our rivers. Microplastics are small, tiny pieces of plastic that have been broken up or accidentally dumped in our water. Did you know that a lot of our materials that are made out of plastic originally start in the form of small plastic beads? Well, at one point in time, these plastic beads were accidentally spilled into a major waterway, and plastic beads can now be found all over the beaches of the world. Even in the most remote parts of the world, these small plastic beads are still being found. The plastic beads don't disintegrate in the water, and they keep on causing problems. We want to reduce the amount of these microplastics that are found in our water, and we can only do that if people like you take action against microplastic. Lastly, there's suspended water pollution. Suspended water pollution means that foreign objects have made their way into our body of water and are not being broken down. They eventually sink down to the bottom of the lake or the river and cause further issues. They create a swampy type environment down at the bottom, which can not only create a new habitat for bacteria and new form and invasive species to live, but it can also decrease the oxygen that is within our body of water. And our fish need that oxygen, as do all of our microorganisms in our lakes. Suspended waste can also, when it's floating up near the top, it can also block the sunlight that gets into our water. Many of our little creatures, especially the plants, rely on photosynthesis from the sunlight in order to survive. If there's waste and litter and garbage all floating at the top of the water, then they're not able to get that much needed sunlight. This is why, before we leave today, we're going to try and clean up some litter that's around here and make the space nice and clean. Now, before we leave today, we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to return all of our friends back into the lake. It's really important that we do this nice and gentle because they've taught us a lot about our lake here today, and we need to respect and honor them and the wisdom that they shared. As we're going to let them go, we're going to say a thank you to all of our friends. Maybe you named yours. If you did, while you release them, thank them by name. We're not going to keep any of what we found today because they don't belong with us. They belong back at home in nature. Thank you, Mr. Pincher. Thank you, Mr. Shelley. There you go. Oh, thank you very much, everyone. Now that our friends are home, it's high time we head home too. But before we do that, there's a couple things we need to do first. We're going to take a moment of time and clean up the garbage around us. We don't want that wet garbage getting into our waterway. After all, we talked about how garbage pollutes our water, and we definitely don't want to pollute the water. Then, I'm going to give each of you a handout. These handouts illustrate all of the different organisms that we talked about today, and as well as show what groups they belong in. You can use these handouts at home to explore waters near where you live. And lastly, I'm going to invite you to check us out at eagleriverlake.com, where we post pictures about all of the cool things that we find in our water and give you regular updates to how our efforts for water conservation are going. We also encourage you to share with us what you find about your home, as we always want to see and learn from you. Lastly, we want to invite you to help spread awareness about the issues involving water pollution. You can do this by checking us out online and helping by designing a poster. We share these posters all over the place, and we would love to add yours to the collection of materials to help raise awareness. Together, we can make the world a better place, and I hope that you learned something today. Thanks for coming over to Eagle River Lake, and we can't wait to hear from you again.